Hi, good morning, folks. Welcome to our virtual coalition meeting. This is a copy of our funding statement. You all will receive a copy of the slides, and so you'll be able to review and see who funds a lot of the programs that we have. You can go to the next slide. So just to review our meeting agenda for the day, we will have a welcome and introduction, which we just participated in. We're going to have a very exciting restorative justice training presented by Joe Podlasek from the Trickster Cultural Center and Ray Galarza. And these are the various points that they will cover. And then we will have an evaluation. And just so you know, those of you who are here to receive a CEU or CPDU, it's required that you participate in the survey in order to receive that certificate. And then we will adjourn. So I don't want to delay because I know it's going to be pretty exciting what we're going to go through with the training. So you can go to the next slide. Just to give you a quick review, our coalition, those of you who are new, we have an executive committee, and those are the folks who participate on our executive committee. We have various individuals from many sectors in the community. Our co-chair, along with Joe Podlasek, is Yasi Delgado. Unfortunately, there was a fire at Schaumburg High School. Everyone is okay, but Yasi cannot be here this morning due to that emergency. But the other individuals, most of them are participating on this call today. But if you want to learn more about our coalition, if you're interested in joining, you can visit the coalition's website at cpydcoalition.org. Again, our mission and our vision is to organize, educate the community to prevent youth substance use and other harmful behaviors. And our vision is a healthy, safe, and supportive and productive community. Included on our website, as well as along with what you will receive, the copies of the PowerPoint slide, will be a document that includes all of the programs from our HIV prevention programs to our substance use prevention programs, et cetera. So you'll get an in-depth description of all of the different projects that we have throughout the various Northwest suburbs. You can go to the next slide. So I went through all that very quickly because we wanted to give as much time to Joe and Ray for the presentation, which we're very excited. So I want to turn it over to Joe and Ray.
Hi, so I guess we're supposed to introduce ourselves. So my name is Ray Galarza, school social worker at Elk Grove High School. I'm old. I've been working with teens for about 20 years now. First as a substance abuse counselor, and now as a school social worker. So that's a little bit about me. Joe, why don't you introduce yourself?
So bonjour, my name is Joe Podlasek. I'm Ojibwe and Polish, and I'm the CEO of the Trickster Cultural Center. And I do a lot of work with cultural practices of all kinds, and especially traditional Native American practices and ceremonies. And so that's how I wound up with Ray, and I'm excited to share a little bit.
So we're going to play just a quick video to give you an overall on what restorative practices is.
Our world is changing at a breathtaking pace. Social patterns that have long characterized human life are changing dramatically around the globe, diminishing social bonds within families, schools, workplaces, and communities. But humans are hardwired to connect. Just as we need food, shelter, and clothing, we also need strong and meaningful relationships to thrive. With all this in mind, what is restorative practices? Restorative practices is an emerging social science that studies how to strengthen relationships between individuals and within communities. When put into practice, the effects are profound. In schools, students experience greater safety and sense of belonging, resulting in improved behavior, less bullying, and less violence. In workplaces, leaders facilitate direct communication among staff and address conflict as it arises. The result is higher performance, greater accountability, and effective collaboration. In criminal justice, new options allow victims and offenders, friends and family, to repair the emotional harm caused by crime. Throughout our neighborhoods, restorative practices give regular people more voice in the issues that matter most. In a nutshell, restorative practices is the science of relationships and community. Your individual daily interactions have a big impact on the world around you, at your job, with young people, and throughout your community. How we relate matters. This video was brought to you by the International Institute for Restorative Practices. To learn more, attend our flagship event, Basic Restorative Practices, enroll in a graduate course, or join us at a world conference.
So for today, our learning targets, objectives, or our takeaways is going to be, we're going to run through the history of restorative practices, past, present, what restorative practices are and what restorative justice are. We're going to focus on the big thing, which is snatch circles. We're going to actually process and conduct a restorative practice circle. And then we're going to process how we run that. And then we're going to give you guys the opportunity to actually go into breakout rooms and practice it as well.
Okay, so this is where you want me, Ray?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so restorative circles has its roots in restorative practices. I'm not going to read this to you because I just want to talk about the circles themselves and what has transformed into different ways of using our traditional practices. So there's several ways to set up and prepare before a talking circle or the circles happen. And that's where the conferences practices and indigenous practices are implemented. So when we set up a circle, we should always have it open, an opening to the east. So it takes about 10 minutes for somebody to set this up, whoever's leading the circle in advance. So you set up your circles, whether it's 5 people or 50 people, but you always leave an opening to the east. You want to start out with a gift of tobacco. Tobacco is something that we use, bringing back historical practices prior to money. Tobacco used to bring the highest yield in trade. So we still hold that in high value. And when we offer that, it's offering a lot. So that's put down in the circle. And then the practice of coming in and going to your left is very important. And then if you should happen to get up, you have to walk all the way around to the left. You know, usually the last seat, which would be the first chair to the left, is easy to stand up and go right out that opening. Out of respect and the way that things are done, you walk around this whole circle. It's a way of connecting with everybody. If you have to leave to go to the bathroom, get a coffee, get a water, it's just good practices to do. And then one of the more common things that have spun out of control is the use of a talking stick or feather. It's become a volleyball, a soccer ball, a pen. That's an important object that gives the respect of whoever is holding that object, the time and the space to talk, and everybody else should be listening. And that teaches respect for the speaker, for others, and the same when it transfers over. So that's an important factor. And we use a feather, or there's a talking stick that we could make as an art project prior to, the week before the talking circle. But that's a very sacred object that we use eagle feathers for. But you must be a native person to have a eagle feather. So there's turkey feathers, there's other feathers that could be used. Which, Ray, I still owe you one. I was supposed to get them to you when we did our talking circle a couple of weeks ago. So I still have them. for the group that came. But in essence, it's about the setup,
Audio.
the offering of tobacco, the practice of the circle. And another element is if you should ever have a bag or something that's, you know, somebody around the circle, you never want to step over anything because that's a sign of disrespect. That's throughout our life and our way of living. You know, sometimes it's, you know, and it's challenging for those that have kids. They're laying on the floor watching TV or playing games. You never want to step over them because that's a sign of disrespect. So if there's somebody's purse or jacket or something in that circle on the floor or their laptop, walk around it. Take the one step off to the side and walk around it. But I think those are the very basics of how to do these circles. And then the conversation itself can run into whatever, you know, here, and it's restorative justice practices, which is a great topic. It can be any topic. But it's about building that trust first, and what's said in the circle stays in the circle. So I think those are the fundamentals of running a talking circle. So Ray, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. So we felt it was very important to talk about the roots of this process with Native people, Indigenous people, because in academia today, this is a hot topic. This is something that is being taught in many different ways. I'm actually in grad school right now at the IIRP. And the interesting thing is they touched upon the roots of Indigenous people, maybe 2% of the course. So we wanted to reiterate that where the roots come from and how you actually should process and proceed with the circle, okay? So if we can go to the next 2 slides to the social discipline. So the principles and the idea between restorative practice is that, and specifically dealing with an authority figure, that people are going to be happier, cooperate more, and be productive when they feel that the person that's in authority is doing things with them as opposed to them or for them. So if we look at this box and we look at the 2 box, top left corner, you see that it's punitive. That happens when there's a system in place that has high limits, high boundaries, rules, but low support. And when that happens, the person that is being involved, they might feel that they're being punished. Because in this situation, an example I can give is a student that gets in trouble, he or she might be suspended and they go home, so they do not learn. The situation on the bottom right where we see the 4, permissive, that's when there's very low control boundaries and very high support. An example of that I can say is when I tell my daughter to do the dishes and she doesn't, and then I just say, forget it, I'll do it myself. And in that situation, they don't learn. In the bottom left, we see the not, the neglectful, and this is the worst place that you could possibly be because there's absolutely no limits, no control, and there's nobody that's supporting anyone. I don't want to offend anyone with kids, but the best example I can give is imagine a playground with a bunch of 5-year-olds running around and half of them are tattletales and the other half are bullies. So it's chaos. Now, where we want to be is in the with box, because that is fully restorative. That is when there are high expectations, rules, boundaries, but they are known what they are. And there's also high supports, people being supportive in nature, physically, emotionally. And that's when that person's gonna feel that you are doing things with them. The easiest example or example I can give is this is where instead of lowering the bar for someone, you want to lift the bar higher, okay? The thing is, when we lift that bar higher, we also have to increase the amount of support that we provide for them. So we should never lower the bar on any of the people we work with. We should lift it, but remember, we have to support them more, okay? So the history of restorative practices, as we stated, basically, it's a way to create, strengthen, to repair, transform the relationships. This is relationships 101. Restorative practices is all about relationships. And we're talking now people, communities, and societies, okay? So now we talk about restorative justice. And what restorative justice is it's the process to repair and transform, as I said earlier, but we do this by including the person that created the harm and addressing their needs and limitations, and also the person that's the victim or the person that was harmed, and we go and we support them in their needs and limitations. So we are really working with those who have harmed and those who have been harmed, excuse me. So when we look at the overall on this, basically the criminal justice system is the system that's in place right now in the US. That is the punitive criminal justice system. What that means is it's a system that's set up to enforce rules, regulations, laws. And when those rules, regulations are broken, they use punishment. And the reason they use punishment is they try to use as a discouragement from the person to re-engage in doing that again. The problem with that is that there isn't a lot of victim involvement in that. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But so on the restorative justice side, what we're seeing is we are holding that person accountable. We're still holding them accountable, but we're asking them to take responsibility for their actions. And it's a way that we can meet their needs and their limitations, and also at the same time include the victim or the person that was harmed and work on their needs and limitations. The byproduct of this is that there isn't a lot of recidivism that takes place. So it doesn't happen more than once. And statistics show that that's up to 83% when done with fidelity in a school system. So here's a couple of examples of what restorative versus the traditional system would be. And this is a school example. So on the restorative side, we see that the student who's caused the harm, the perpetrator, they have an opportunity to express the remorse and make amends for it. All right, they get to tell their story of why they did what they did. In a traditional system, that student that broke the rule, they would just get the punishment. They really wouldn't have an opportunity to kind of explain why it happened, what remorse they might have or not have. Okay. On the restorative side, we have a student that is going to learn how to behave or react, because we are going to teach them about what it is that they did so that they can take responsibility. So they're going to learn by taking responsibility, not just from the punishment. On the traditional side, we have a student that's not going to learn because all they're going to do is be punished, and they're going to go home probably, maybe suspended, and the behavior can possibly happen again. I want to give an example of, and this works for school, so I want to give this example. If you're a math teacher and you have a student that's struggling with math, would you suspend them? No, you would work with them and support them, tutor them, and help them with math. So why is it that when we have a student that breaks a rule, we suspend them and send them home? We don't take the same approach of asking them to take responsibility and learn from the situation. So it's a pretty backwards system. And that's my opinion. So moving along.
Hey, can I jump in? Just to give you a little support there that, our talking circles have come from community-based. So it gives you a chance to talk to your peers. As Ray just laid out, the person that caused the incident, sometimes they're disconnected. So these circles give them an opportunity to have a discussion, share but with their peers, along with the teachers or principals or whoever, or family members. So it builds other positive relationships based on who's in the circle. Because otherwise, it's the traditional way, it's been one-on-one. So it's whoever caused the problem, whoever creates the punishment. There is no issue for the talking circle and those elements.
Great point, Joe, and you actually made me remember that I actually missed a spot. When I said earlier, in the criminal justice system, there's really not a lot of involvement with the victim or the person that was harmed. It's handled by lawyers. So rarely is the punishment really even suggested or part of it, asked of the victim, the person that was harmed. But in a restorative process, restorative circle, restorative conference, the victim or the person that was harmed is in that circle. So they get to express their feelings, what they felt when it happened, and they get to actually be involved in the process as opposed to two lawyers kind of handling it out and hashing it out. So, okay, so this is probably my favorite and most important slide. So I actually am going to take a couple seconds here to let you guys read it. So as I said earlier, when I ask people about what do they know about restorative justice or restorative circles, it's restorative circles. That's what they say. They're like, oh, it's about circles, just forming up circles, and that's what it is. In reality, that only makes up about 20% of restorative practices. And I know that the title said restorative justice, but you can't understand restorative justice unless you understand restorative practice, because restorative justice is a part of restorative practices. So the big chunk, about 80%, is actually done in your regular day. It's just what we do and how we do it. And that's 80% of the day, all right? That's building the relationship. 15%, that would be circles, proactive circles. So those are circles that you're gonna have to try to build a relationship even further. The last 5% is when a restorative conference would take place, okay? And that's where the actual wording and everything that goes with restorative justice takes place. So restorative justice is just 5% of what the overall practice really is. If we go to the next slide, we can see that what we look at is kind of like the old, well, not the old, but this is kind of the RTI model, response to intervention, that schools use. So that bottom 80% is where most of the work is done, okay? And we use effective statements and effective questions. That 15%, as I said, that's gonna be the circles, and then that last 5% is going to be the conference, okay? There's a continuum. And if we look on the next slide, I'll kind of explain what those are and kind of refer back to that triangle. The first three statements that are on the informal, the effective statements, effective question, and small impromptu, those are all tier one questions. Those are all tier one. Tier two would be the group or the circle, and then tier three would be that formal conference, okay? So as I said, most of that work is gonna be in that first tier, that the way that you make your statements, the way that you ask your questions, and small impromptu conversations. And small impromptu conversations would be, it's kind of like a circle, but it's a one-on-one circle. Okay, so that's when you might take that person aside and have that conversation with them. The first two would be as a group, okay? And I'll kind of clarify more what tier one is as we go to the next slide, please. And for tier one, as I said, that's that building relationships. Under this area, we're gonna really do everything that we possibly can to build that relationship. But remember, I said this, we're already doing this. When someone walks into our house, someone walks into our community center, someone walks into our classroom, we greet them, we say hello, we're smiling. We might ask them how their day was. We might compliment them on their hair, which I get all the time. You might compliment on something that's going on in their life. Okay, so you wanna stay positive. If you're in a classroom, I kind of throw out, like just literally throw out some candy. All right, so tier one is the bread and butter of restorative practices, okay? So on the next slide, we actually kind of take a look at what that is. As remember I said, the first two, the effective statements and effective questions. So in this case, language actually does speak louder than actions because of the fact that the way you're talking to them, the way you're expressing yourself, and an example, we have these four areas with effective language. So the first one is the observation. You're gonna make the I statements. I feel that you're doing a great job. I see that you're doing a great job. I like how you're acting today. So those are gonna be those type of statements. The second one, when we move on to feelings, those are gonna be your RP, your restorative practices questions. What were you thinking when you did that? How are you doing? Are you okay? So those are those type of questions that you're gonna ask. When we get into number 3 and number 4, that's gonna be more like what you would use in the impromptu conversations, but as a grounding, these are the 4 that effective statements areas that we would use. The needs would be the acknowledgement, acceptance, and resolution. Acknowledge is when something occurs. Example being a student misbehaves. In that stage, you're going to work with them at first. Second, accepted, you're going to talk to them about the actual incident, because the first one is more calming them down. The second one is getting to the point, and then the last one is resolving and helping them back out. And that really kind of goes into 4, and that's the actual action that you're going to take place. If we go to the next one, I can break that down for you as far as the impromptu, or I apologize. So here's some examples of the restorative questions. So the first column is going to be for when a student does harm or is exhibiting challenging behavior. So instead of saying, what are you doing, or yelling at them, it's just more like, what happened? What were you thinking about at that time? What have you thought about since that time? Those are your questions that are restorative in nature. Now, when you're working with the person that is the victim or the person that was harmed, you want to continue with those effective statements and questions by asking them the questions on the right. What did you think of when you realized that happened to you? What impact does this incident have on you and others? What's been the hardest thing for you? Because you are meeting them where they are and you're working with their needs and limitations. And that's the key to building relationships. So the tier 1, which is still the impromptu conversations, are more the restorative conversations that you would have. This would be the example that I would give, like I said, if there's a student that's misbehaving in a class, if you're at a group and a student is doing something that you don't want them to do, you see a group of kids in the community. So that's for this situation. What you would want to do is not call them out in front of everybody, first of all. So you never want to do that. So you want to have that conversation with them on the side. So you might want to call them outside in your hallway or just kind of pull them aside. And you're going to do 3 things. You're going to validate their feelings. All right, so that's going to be unwinding. You're going to perspective building. You're going to rewind about like what happened. And then you're going to really work at repairing it. So my example, or the way that I can kind of explain this is, would be the first, well, this might look like CPI to some of you that are in school, but actually this process is called LSCI, Life Space Crisis Intervention. And for the validating the feelings, I would associate that with the drain off and the timeline of LSCI. The drain off is when that student is really kind of hot-tempered, like flying, yelling, whatever it may be. So during that stage, you want to calm them down by using the restorative questions. Hey, what happened? Are you all right? How are you feeling? Which leads to the insight. Okay, what exactly, or on the timeline, excuse me, what exactly is it that happened? What is going on? Moving on to the perspective building, in LSCI, I would call that the central issue and the insight. So that's where you're really going to talk about what is it that happened. You did this, but what happened before? What got you to this point? Why were you in this situation? And you're really going to kind of focus on the root cause. And then the repair, that's where the new skills and the transfer happens, because in that stage, you're working with them to try to get them back into the classroom. So you might work with them on some coping skills, some things they might do, anything like that. LSCI is great, and that's for a longer conversation. But that's what impromptu conversations role would be. Okay. So now we're going to go into tier 2. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to explain how to do a restorative circle. And since we are in the Zoom, we'll kind of explain it this way. And Joe, please jump in at any time. So under Zoom, what we're going to do, and obviously if you're in person as well, the first thing you want to do is you want to do your normal opening. As Joe said, now in schools, teachers and staff members are using like, this is a talking piece, this is a talking piece, whatever it may be, which really kind of stems from that eagle feather or the talking piece that is from indigenous roots. For this, and Joe, please help me out with this. If you do not have those items, it's okay to start this way, but before you start and when you do your opening, you have to acknowledge where the roots of the circle that you're about to begin come from. So you need to acknowledge from Native people and indigenous people. Okay, so at least do that.
So if I can jump in here for just a second, Ray, just to add to that, this is same, all the things that we're talking about blend into community, and your school and your students are part of your community. But just like this talking stick or item, you wouldn't go into a classroom unprepared, right? To teach a class. Why would you go into this and just grab anything? This is just as important for us, even more so as the people that it originated from, that you find this object, a talking stick or a feather, that you take seriously into this part of the element, because that's something that the kids, the teachers, whoever's in the circle are going to relate to as a respectful item. If you just pick up anything that happens to be convenient, that means one, you didn't prepare, and two, they're not going to take that seriously. Because then if it's a ball, they're going to take the ball, and if you're on one side of the circle and the other side of the circle, eventually somebody's going to throw it across that circle to the other kid, when it should be picked up and walked over to them and done respectfully.
Thank you. So in a Zoom setting though, you're not going to have a talking piece that's going to make it around. So in a Zoom setting, the method that I've been using is we are going to have our questions, but the person that is going to answer first, the leader, they would state, if I was the leader in the situation and the question was, what is your favorite color? Before I answer that question, I would say my name, and we'll talk about that as well, but I would say, and Joe's gonna go next. Then I would answer it. So that way you know who's going to be next in the order. And that would be, or I'm sorry, so when you're in Zoom though, and then as you're kind of getting to the last people, you might not know who's left. So you just ask them, hey, can you raise your hand as to who's going to be next? Okay. Now you can, if we go to the next slide, you can still do, actually, yes, so sequential, non-sequential. So sequential, that is how, well, sequential and non-sequential you can do in person, both. Sequential is how Joe said, you would start at one point, whoever is going to start, wherever they might be sitting, but you're gonna go to the left. You're gonna go clockwise. And the talking piece, I'm sorry, this is what was in my hand, I apologize. So the talking piece is going to be passed with the person's left hand and given to the person to your left, and it's gonna be given to their left hand. So if it's sequential, it would just be to the person to your left. If it was non-sequential, which means anybody can go, and you're in person, you still wanna do how Joe said. You're going to stand up with the item. You're going to walk in a clockwise manner to them and pass it with your left hand to their left hand, and continue walking in a clockwise pattern to sit back in your original seat. Okay, so that's how you would do sequential and non-sequential. We really use a non-sequential over Zoom, but there is a way to do sequential over Zoom, which I'm going to show you in the next slide. If you know that you're going to do a circle and you know who's going to be part of it, you can create a template. You can go to the next slide, please. One back. If you know who's going to be in there, you can create a template where you create a virtual circle, and then you know what the order is going to be. So I just have this, and I just put random names into this circle. So you would have the template where you could actually just type in the names of everyone. And if Tracy was going to be the leader and start, we would go in a clockwise manner. So then it would go to Sheila, Larry, Mike, and so forth. So that's if you have time and you know who's going to be in your circle. And that would be a sequential. A way to do a non-sequential, as I said earlier, you're just going to kind of pick who goes after you. Okay. So let's kind of talk about how to actually do one then. So you're going to begin with, this is optional, but a ritual. When you are in person, you don't have to do this because you're going to follow the full Native American historical traditions, and that is with the sage or tobacco. For those of you guys that are in school, I already talked to Joe about this, and Joe, jump in if I say anything incorrect, but for us, I think that we can get away with maybe probably bringing sage into the school, not sure about the tobacco, but even if, don't start, and this is a really bad joke because what happened at Schaumburg, don't start a fire, but go to the east side of the building, find wherever that is in the building, and maybe burn a little bit of the sage or the tobacco before you start any of your circles. Is that correct, Joe?
Yes, that's very correct.
Okay.
And that opens up, the reasoning for that is it opens up the passageway between God, the creator, however you pray, to that circle that you're going to be working. So it opens up that communications for the prayers, the help, and things that you may need during this time. Yeah, and a bowl of candy for school settings is fine. You might even take one of those pieces of candy out where you burn the sage and put it down to the east, and that's a offering. Keeping in mind quantity does not matter. So it's not like putting a whole bag of candy out there. You can just take a little piece of the candy and put it out there. You're on mute, Ray.
Sorry. Bane of my existence. So if you don't have that, you could use whatever you designate as a talking piece. You're going to use that as a talking piece. Just remember, acknowledge the root of this process with Native American historical traditions and Indigenous people, please. Okay. So the next slide. As the leader, you're going to begin. As I said earlier, you're going to begin with the first question, but you're going to pick who goes next if it's non-sequential. But regardless of how many times you've been in a circle with the same people or new people, you're always going to start off by first saying your name, okay? Introducing yourself. And you're going to want to start out with a low-level question. And remember, we want to model the actions we want to see in other people, okay? So it talks about the norms. So Joe, do you want to, actually I'm throwing you on the spot here. Do you want to go over these norms that you would do in a talking circle?
Sure. So as we mentioned a couple times, the respect of that talking piece, not only for who brings it, but for everybody that participates. And then, this goes back to the community and family. And, I think the school settings are that you speak from the heart. You can share, as this grows, people will share more. So share enough, but some modifications that have to happen for the classroom is because when we do one in the community, we say a start time, we don't have an end time because people may talk for quite a while, but we ask that whoever has that talking piece be respectful of the next person or the rest of the groups because they want to share too. So that's where listening comes in. So that you can interact with the person or the people that spoke before you, and then add your own perspective. Remain in the circle, unless there's something that is absolutely necessary, and then you leave going to the left and all the way around. And confidentiality is, that's really a learned trait in this. You say it at the beginning, but people will get it the more they participate in these circles that, hey, you know what? We'll wait to talk about that till next week when we do the circle again. If they're in between, you just finished one and they want to continue the conversation. It's best in most times to keep it in that circle, that conversation, but not always. I mean, things can spin off. That's how help happens. But you want to remain confidential with each other.
And the only other thing I'll add, because we're in a world of technology, silence your phones, please. Okay, so here's an example of low-level questions. So these are going to be questions that you're going to ask as you're starting to build trust, build relationship. And regardless of what the topic is, I like to start with a low-level question, regardless of whatever the topic of our discussion is going to be. With the low-level questions, you're going to allow people to skip, but we're going to come back to you because we want people to get a little comfortable with speaking. And we know you're going to have some shy kids, but some of these questions are just pretty simple. What is your favorite food? What is your favorite color? Coke or Pepsi? So we don't want students to pass on these low-level questions. When we move up, you're going to see on the middle level questions, these are a little deeper. Next slide, please. So these are asking and probing a little bit more information from a person. So for these, depending on how long you've done your group, how the group feels comfortable or not comfortable, you may allow students to skip and then you'll come back to them or to actually pass. And like I said, you have to kind of feel out your group and know that. But these are the type of questions that we would ask where it's not really a one-word response, but you're going to have to speak in a full sentence or a couple sentences. And then last is going to be the high-level questions. And for these, you always want to allow, even if you've been meeting for like years, you always want to allow people to take a pass, because these are going to be very deep and personal questions that you're asking them to share about themselves. So you want to be respectful and allow them to pass. If a person's passing, all we ask is them to be active listeners though. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are actually going to model a circle for you guys. So we're going to have 4 of us that are going to be on Spotlight, and we're going to kind of run through a quick 10-minute circle. So if we can get that going, please.
Before we jump into that, I wanted to take a moment, and Ray, you mentioned about the gifting of the left hand, of handing it and passing it, but we didn't talk about why. So the left hand is used to gift and receive, because when you extend your hand out, your left, that's closest to your heart. So that means you're giving from your heart, and or the gift that you're about to receive, or the item that you're about to receive for that moment or a couple minutes is accepted from your heart in a good way.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and model, and we'll be asking some questions. Okay, so, and this is Zoom fashion, of course. All right, welcome. How are you guys doing today? Thank you for coming today. My name is Ray Galarza, and today we're going to facilitate a circle. So thank you for volunteering today. Before we start, I just want to kind of go over some of the norms with you and kind of explain how we're going to run this. So the norms for today are going to be, we are going to be respectful of each other. We have no talking piece, but we will, and who will be speaking next. When you speak, please speak from your heart. You're speaking your truth and only your truth. As we're speaking, please share enough, but also be mindful that there might be other people that want to share, but share enough that you speak your truth. If you're not speaking, we ask that you listen with respect. Please no side conversations, and please silence your phone if you have one. Remain in the circle. If for some reason you have to leave the circle, just please send me a chat in the private message and just let me know that you're leaving. And the most important, honor confidentiality. What happens in the circle is going to be powerful. We are going to share a lot, and we're asking you that you keep that within this circle. So to begin, as I stated, my name is Ray. We're going to continue the circle, and we're going to do it in a non-sequential manner. So what that means is, when I ask a question, I will go first, I will answer it. But before I answer that question, I'm going to pick who's going to go next. And then that person, before they answer the question, is going to pick who goes next. Are there any questions right now? Okay. Now, if we were in person, we'd be doing this a little bit differently. We are in Zoom, so I just want to acknowledge the roots of this process are from Native American indigenous people. And we are using a process that they started hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So as I said, my name, I apologize. When you first go, please state your name as well, please. All right, so the first question is going to be, what is your favorite food? So before I answer, I'm gonna ask Hamid to go next. So my favorite food is menudo. It is a Mexican spicy dish, really good.
I'm gonna have to go with my mom's kebabs. I'm not gonna lie, I love a couple of reasons. Number one, it tastes amazing, and there's something sentimental about having mom's cooking that just you can't replace. I did make a mistake though. I did not recognize somebody before I answered. So Brenda, I apologize. You're next.
Oh, I think we're both named Brenda, right? Or
Yeah, break member is Brenda.
oh, I'm also okay. Well, Sorry, I don't know. Wasn't sure both Brenda and the situation. I'll just go first. It wasn't clear. Um, so after me will be the other Brenda, break member. And my favorite food is anything with sweet potato.
My name is Brenda, and after I go, I'm sorry, I don't know who's left to go.
So you would kick that back to me. Sorry.
Back to you. Okay. So my favorite food is probably anything with steak or beef. Hamburger, steak, that's it. And I think I pass it back, sorry.
Thank you. So the next question is going to be, I want you to finish this statement. The question is, if I could be any animal, I would be. Shoot, I messed up. No, because I had to say the question first. And then I'm going to have Brenda, break member, go next. So if I could be any animal, I would be a cheetah because I want to be able to run really fast and they just look so cool.
My name is Brenda, and after I will pass to Hamid. If I could be any animal, I would be a bear, so I could sleep all winter, eat all spring and summer, and sleep all winter.
Before I answer, Brenda, you're on next. If I could be an animal, I would probably want to be some type of eagle or a bird that can fly around, especially during the wintertime. I can go down south when the weather gets cold, kind of pick where I want to be on any given day.
So after me will be Ray, and mine was the same as Hamid. I would be an eagle or any type of bird, just to oversee like how people I love are doing.
So the next question is going to be, if I could sing a song, any song at karaoke, what would it be? And I'm going to go with Brenda Carlos next. So I would pick Today Is a Good Day by Ice Cube, the clean version, because I am having a good day today.
So after me will be the other Brenda break member, and I would choose any song from Greece to do karaoke.
After me will be Hamid, and I would choose My Wish because it's a song that I love for all my boys.
Thank you very much. I'll kick it back to Ray. When I'm done, I would say I grew up in the 80s. I'd probably have to go with Eye of the Tiger. Reminds me of watching the Rocky marathons on TBS with my brothers. So I would probably go with Eye of the Tiger.
Thank you for sharing, Hamid. The next question is going to be, I want you to finish this sentence. I am totally awesome at, and I am going to have Hamid go next. I am totally awesome at loving my family. I come home and I hug them and they're like, why are you hugging us so much? You're weird, stop it. But I totally love that. I love the affection that they give me.
Thank you, Ray, for sharing that. Before I answer, I will hand it off to Brenda, non-break member. So Brenda C. Oh, I am totally awesome, Ray. I'm gonna have to steal that from you. Usually my dad drops my daughters off at school, and I got to drop them off today because he had a doctor's appointment, and it was the best way I could have started my day. And just that feeling, if I could do it every day, I definitely would. So just being part of a family that is loving is probably the thing that I put the most amount of effort into. So.
All right, so after me will be Brenda break member, and I'm totally awesome at listening. I think I'm very good at listening to others, and I feel like people always come to me, and I feel like it's definitely like a good quality to have.
After me will be Ray. I am totally awesome at being a mom and now grandmama. I think I pretty awesome at connecting with kids.
I'm gonna break script for a second, and the next question is gonna be a middle level question, but I want to ask before, well, actually, I wanna see if you guys would be comfortable doing a higher level question. It might be a little bit more of a personal question. And how about this? I will tell you what the question is. Who is your go-to person in life and why? Would you feel comfortable sharing that question or sharing out? Okay. So the question is, who is your go-to person in your life and why? And I will have Brenda, break member, go next. The go-to person in my life is my wife, because whenever anything is going great, she's the first person I want to call to let her know. And when things are not going great, she's the first person I want to call so that she can hear me out. She's my therapist. She's my love. She is my go-to person.
After I go, I will pass to Hamid. My go-to person is also my spouse, my husband. He is, like you said, the first person you call when things are good, when things are bad. It's always safe, and he makes me a better version of myself in that he doesn't think like me, so he challenges me to do differently.
Thank you for that. After I'm done, I'll hand it off to Brenda C. Go-to people would have to be my mom and dad. They've helped me raise my two girls, and just celebrated their 10th birthday on Saturday. So through thick and thin, they've been there and they've had my back.
After me will be Ray. Also, like Hamid, my go-to people would be more than one, would be both my parents. I feel like I'm very close to them. I have a very strong relationship with them. So yeah, they definitely are like the first people that I call when something good or bad has happened.
Okay, well, those are the questions because we want to be able to give you guys, everyone some time to do this as well. So if we can get out of the spotlight and go back to sharing. So this question though is for the people that were in this circle. So can all of you guys maybe answer the first question with just maybe two or three words? So what did you think about the process? And you can use any method to go first or second or whatever. Okay, do you want me to call people? Okay, Brenda.
I like the process. I like the respect in having your time and passing it. So I liked the process.
Other Brenda, what was challenging about this? Or was anything challenging?
I think for me, it's just not being in like an actual circle. I like to see people, and I think just like the virtual setting is challenging.
Okay. Hamid, if you were running the circle, what would be difficult for you, do you think?
I think the most challenging piece of this is being in a room with people you don't know and making yourself vulnerable right out of the gates, going from, it's high risk. And I can see how some people would struggle in an environment like this where you don't know people, and here you are sharing personal things about yourself. So I found that to be the thing that's probably the most challenging about the process.
Okay. Brenda C, how do you think you can help? How do you think this can help in your profession, in your life?
I definitely see myself as like a future school social worker using this in different like groups once, whether it's virtual or in person. And in life, even when maybe just having like family sit downs and we need to talk about something like at home, I think this would be very helpful.
Okay, and then last question, Brenda, the other Brenda, picture who you would want in this circle and why.
I run a teen center here. So I think the people that I would want in this circle would be my girls group. I think it would be a very safe way for them to share. And I think they would be very open to it.
Thank you. Before we go to the next slide, I want to share. So for this process, you guys noticed that we asked those really low level questions, and those could have been answered with 1 or 2 words, and some people chose to elaborate a little longer. Then we got to the middle question where it kind of forced you to speak a little bit longer and share a little bit more. And then that high level question, which I wasn't going to ask, but I thought we were doing well, so I asked you guys. But you brought up a great point about like going right out the gates. You never want to do that. So you need to start building that relationship with that first 80% before you even go to a circle. You know, get the classroom comfortable with themselves, with you as well. Get the group, your community, wherever you are, get them comfortable to get to know who you are by just your words and your actions. Then you want to do a proactive circle. And when you do a proactive circle, you're only going to do the low level questions and then maybe get through half of some medium level. But you would never get to the high level questions until maybe the 3rd time. Well, it would depend. You'd have to kind of feel them out and see how the group's going, but you would never do that. So I apologize. I just wanted to show the group, but thank you guys for being involved. So with that said, we are now going to allow you guys all to try to take the opportunity. So if you can go to the next slide. What we're going to have you guys do is you guys are going to go into breakout rooms. When you guys go in the breakout room, it should be like 5 or 6. One person please pick to be the facilitator. Okay, and oh, I'm sorry, in the chat, can we put the questions? So there's going to be a link, so you guys will have the questions. You'll have low-level questions and medium-level questions. You can put that that doc in the chat, please. If you can't decide who's going to be the leader, I always go with whoever has their birthday closest to January 1st, that person can go. So as best as you can remember, just try to go over the rules, the guidelines. Begin with the low-level questions. Answer about 1 minute per person. And then as you're doing this, if you guys have any questions, please write them down because we're going to go ahead and process this afterwards. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you guys had an enjoyable experience, got to know each other a little bit better as well in the short time that you guys were together. Because there were a lot of groups though, let's see if maybe a couple groups can report out. If one person from the group just wants to maybe answer some of these questions or talk a little bit about their experience in the group. And if you have any questions, go ahead and ask as well. Any volunteers right now?
I could share, Ray. This is Beth. I just wanted to, I thought the process was really smooth. I thought that you kind of, I didn't know the people in my group before, but just even these low level answers and the low level questions rather are kind of bond you already. Like I want to find out more about certain things. And so I think that connection, you could already feel it happening in just a short amount of time. So I thought it was really a smooth process in that sense.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Oh, actually, Michelle was in my group. So do you want me to still talk about it?
Sure, if you want to, go ahead.
Okay. So I think the process was really smooth, other than we had one in our group who couldn't use the voice function because of where she was. So we just had her type in the chat and it was a little more cumbersome, but it worked out really well because I wanted her to feel included in the group. So that, I guess that was the challenging part. And I don't think anything was really difficult. I had some really nice ladies in my group, and I think we just had a really good time kind of getting to know each other and talking about things that are interesting to us.
Okay, thank you.
Ray, could I add to that for a second?
Absolutely.
So the circle is designed to overcome obstacles like you just faced. So there was somebody that couldn't use the voice perspective, so they chatted. I mean, so what if you had a child with a disability? You'd find a way to make it accommodating, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same process and same thoughts of, this is supposed to be friendly, communicative in any way that is possible to make everybody feel part of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great job, great solution that you guys came up with.
Any other group would like to process?
This is Jessica with Northwest CASA. I was in a group with Ruth and Jeff, and we were practicing and going through and asking those questions. And at the end, we also did process together how this was. And some of us, just based on our job, are used to being on camera or talking in a group. So that might have been easier. But then also some of us had recognized in the group that you know, how it was starting to be talked about, like how this can be applied to our jobs and where we see that this is useful and helpful. And then also how we could have personally felt like, oh yeah, answering questions is easy, or talking in front of people is easy, except when it comes to being some personal stuff, even though these questions were simple, but that vulnerability that can come out, it was nice to be able to experience it, to know what we might ask youth to experience with us.
Great points.
I was in a circle with Hamid and Dr. Young, and one connection that I made going through this in relation to how this would help in your life and your profession is how the similarity to many improvisation exercises that we have done, particularly the concept of yes and, yes, I hear what you say, and here's my perspective. And that came up just because of the third question. I think the high level question came up, and that was a nice connection. So adding that little color and phrase of yes and as you get to know the people, I think has benefit to bring some positive conversation.
Nice. Ray, if I could interject, my name's Margaret and I work with Omni Youth Services, and during COVID, my team has expanded, almost doubled in size. And so part of what we struggle with is connecting, right? Because we're so used to being in the office and building those relationships. This is the kind of exercise we do on a weekly basis just to try to build those relationships virtually. But this gave it a new kind of perspective and deeper meaning to it. And so I appreciate that very much.
Shoot. Margaret, I just want to let you know that the year was 2012. A gentleman by the name of Carlos Rodriguez that worked at Omni held a peace circle with Luis Rodriguez, and I brought a bunch of gang-involved students. First time I ever saw it, fell in love, so he was my inspiration for this, and then I just became a geek and started learning all about it, but thank you.
Thank you. May have been when I first met you.
Yeah, back at Wheeling. Anybody else want to share? I think, Monica, did you have your hand up earlier?
Yes, I did. I was in a circle with Sonia and Rocio, and my name is Monica. I'm a founder of Friends on the Streets community organization, Elk Grove Village, where we take care of homeless community. And our main point is to the street outreach. So having the connection for us is crucial. My main thing is outside of the outreach is to educate people about homelessness. So this is I can't tell you how many times I say this over and over again, probably a million times in my videos, that connection is a key. And you know that, right? Because you probably heard me saying this a million times. Connection is the key. Rolling down the window and saying hi, introducing yourself, it's a key. So taking all the steps to create the relationship until you get to where you're trying to accomplish, it's huge. So this has been absolutely an amazing process for me. Thank you.
All right, so being mindful of time, we have a couple minutes left. I believe there's other stuff that CPYD wants to share, but are there any questions that we can do for like maybe a minute right now? Any questions?
Yeah, I would have a question. What's the optimum number of people in a circle? I participated in a circle one time and it was like 25 people. And that seemed overwhelming till we got around and everybody spoke. So to have real communication, what's your thinking on that?
7 to 8 probably would be ideal, because, and even if you've been with the group for like ages, you still want to work your way up. And then actually here's a great point that I forgot to mention, and this is particularly in my work. You have to be able to balance it. You can't start at the bottom, go all the way to the top, bell rings, okay, bye, have fun. No, you have to have time to bring it up to that level and then work your way back down that ladder back to low-level questions. So I'm so sorry that I forgot to mention that. Thank you for reminding me, Ruth. But that is key because you have to understand that people are going to be vulnerable at that point. So you want to make sure that they leave and that they're okay when they leave. And of course, you want to ask them as they're leaving as well, if you want to stick around, talk, whatever it may be, time permitting. But 7 would probably be ideal, 7 to 8.
It's very helpful.
I think just to help answer Ruth, so if it's outside of a school session, so an evening session or a community session, the numbers can increase. It's like you did 25, but then you have to remove the time limit in order to make it function. Well, I mean, when we do Talking Circle, even at Trickster, we do them almost once a month, less, now that COVID, we've done some online. But we were doing them once a month. And we would say we start at noon and there is no end time. It may go till 4 o'clock. And it may end at 2 o'clock. It depends on the number of people and how the topics flow. There's just some days that people just need to be in the circle and they don't have anything to say. They just know they need some compassion. And they want to listen to help themselves. And, maybe they'll give some feedback for somebody else. But for school sessions, yeah, you got to keep it small to meet the timeline. In the community, we don't put a number or timeline on it.
Okay.
Ray or Joe, quick question. Do you guys have any questions that are that you already have in a bank that would be more applicable to student conflict or resolving student conflict?
Yeah, I can share some with Dan to put up on the website as well. Okay, so I apologize. When you are in a restorative conference, which is different than what we did. Today we did a restorative circle, okay? When you're in a restorative conference, there's a script that you would use when there is the conflict and harm. So I can kind of share a little bit about how that works, but it's different because you want to be able to address that. And in a school setting, it's all about time as well, because you want to be able to address and give everybody equal ability to meet their needs and limitations, but you also, yeah, you understand. Okay, and then Rosa, I guess, at last, and then we can move on. I'm sorry.
Hi, everyone. I'm a parent in Hoffman Estates. My name might sound familiar because I used to work for the Kenneth Young Center. But my question is it valid for the group to be interacting after an answer, or is it meant to be more of a listening? So that was a question that we had in our group. Is it okay to respond to somebody's favorite food comment and talk about that? Or is it just answer, listening, compassion, and then move on?
No, so for, you are able to, it should spark, because most of the time when you go into a circle, you're gonna have a purpose, a topic, okay? And people are gonna be bouncing ideas and questions off each other. So that is the opportunity to do that. There are other things called listening circles. And for listening circles, there are only 4 questions, usually only 4 questions that you ask. And for listening questions, you only answer the question with your truth, and then you move on. But for this, yes, you are able to, and you should. It should spark conversation.
Yeah, so that can be a challenging part of a circle, is the discussion may start with one question or one statement, and you might use your whole time up discussing that one and not get to other levels. So those are scenarios that you have to be ready to, as the leader of the circle, to accommodate for that. So you might have had thought, well, I'm going to get 5 questions in through this group today. And one person brings up one topic that ignites everybody in the group for a conversation. And as long as it's good, healthy, respectful conversations, you want to let that flow. Because that's what that is about. It's a support mechanism and a way to discuss things in a good, good, respectful way. Now, if it goes disrespectful or something, then you need to stop it and call that person out.
Joe, there was a question, I guess, asking about where you can get a talking piece, talking stick. Do you want to address that?
You know, so I'm thinking I'll talk to, I don't know, Nicole or Marion and the team here from Kenneth Young, and maybe we can put together even an online video or Zoom of how to do a talking stick. Or we can make some feathers. I think that would be great. It takes 15, 20 minutes once you have the material. But it's just something that has carried on from the Apache nation of that talking stick, so the Southwest. But we can talk about that. If anybody needs something quickly, I have some turkey feathers at the Trickster. I'm there every day. We're not open to the public yet, but the door is open. Just give me a call that you need to come by and pick up something.
All right, well, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so before folks head off, I do see some follow-up question about talking sticks, not about is it best to make it on your own. I am wondering, Joe, is there a way for folks to email you or somebody else at Trickster if they have additional questions about talking sticks?
Sure, you can, yeah, you can put, or I can put my email out there. That's not a problem.
Okay, that would be great. Yeah, because I know that Crystal is in Texas, I believe. So some of the people in our meeting today are not located nearby. But we recommend people to reach out to Joe if you have further questions. And I think it's great that we're thinking about centering Indigenous people and not culturally appropriating things that are not meant for us to take. So with that said, our meeting is about to end. We'd love for folks to fill out our evaluation survey. This survey also is where you can jot down if you'd like to receive a CEU. I just shared the link to the survey in the chat box. Please take a moment to fill it out. Attendees who would like to receive a CEU will have to fill out this form within 7 days. I recommend doing it just now. And the only folks who are eligible for a CEU are Illinois social workers, Illinois professional counselors, and marriage and family therapists. You can see the information in the chat.
No, because mom's computer will break if you touch it. Okay. Why don't you play while I make some lunch? It's all done now.
And then if you haven't seen already, Ray also shared his email address in the chat if you'd like to contact him for any questions. But yeah, with that said, I hope that everybody enjoyed our training and that you are able to bring some of the content back to your places of work. I'll remind people that we have another coalition coming up March 17th. We'll have our youth-led town hall in May. Please register at CPYDcoalition.org. The link is in the presentation, and you can also connect with us on social media.